Hey folks, it's Callihan Nitro for Nitromaniac TV's wrestling channel, and welcome to my take on Bound for Glory 2018. Yes, it's actually one of my favorite events all year, and this one took place on October 14th, 2018 from the Melrose Ballroom in New York, New York. And the show was live on pay-per-view and on Fight TV, streaming worldwide via the interwebs. If you are brand new to this, and this is one of the first videos you've seen from this channel or myself, Nitro's Take, just a quick disclaimer here off the top, is a series where I take a look at wrestling events and just kind of offer my opinion as a fan on what went down during the night. It's not so much a review of the action as it is just taking the information that we digest as a fan and bringing it forward and, just kind of starting conversations and such. And boy, was there a lot to talk about off this card. Opening contest was Rich Swann and his mystery partner, Willie Mack, who this was his debut card for Impact. Of course, you know Mack from Lucha Underground as well, as a multiple-time Trios champion over there, and bringing his brand of sports entertainment and just sheer awesomeness in the ring over to Impact Wrestling, and it's a good pickup for Impact for sure. Him and Rich Swann look flawless in his tag team match tonight as they defeated former X Division champion Matt Sydal and All Ego Ethan Page in a very high intensity opener. This was a lot of fun to watch, and just back and forth action. The Phoenix Splash was the finisher used by Swann to get the pinfall 1-2-3 on Sydal. So obviously there's going to be a singles match probably in the next few weeks between these two. They've had a little bit of a feud going on. And it seems like we're getting to the culmination of it. Maybe we go down a path now where Swann and Mack challenge for the, almost said TNA, but Impact. You know, it's been more than a year, and still want to say TNA, but no, Impact tag titles. And of course, you'd hear it throughout the night, but this was really played up after this match. COMDA.com, the sponsor of Bound for Glory, and Willie Mack and Rich Swann had a little fun on the mic after the match with a giveaway for COMDA.com. Then we went into a couple of tape packages during the pay-per-view. The first one was replaying the TMZ interview with Johnny Impact and Taya Valkyrie, talking about the main event match, which is for the Impact Heavyweight Championship, which we'll talk about later on, and there's a lot to talk about with that one between Johnny Impact and Austin Aries. Follow that bit of business up with a video where we see Conan laid out backstage. He was attacked, and he says King did it. So King and the OGs, or maybe just King himself, attacks Conan, and that affects the six-man concrete jungle match, or, essentially no rules street fight coming up between the OGs and LAX. Eli Drake's open challenge, the contestant leading into the pay-per-view was stated that it had to be from New York. And what did we get? A guy from Baltimore. We got James Ellsworth coming to the ring and says that even though he's not from New York, he was dating a girl from Staten Island, so that should have kind of counted. It was a good match. It was, for everybody who's hating on Ellsworth online and his involvement in this card and that stuff, Drake and Ellsworth had a decent, quick, sports entertainment type match. I thought there was really nothing wrong with the match itself. Probably the most amount of offense we've seen Ellsworth do in a match in a while on a quote-unquote major show. I know that he's booked on indies quite a bit and has one-on-one matches that routinely go into the 15 or 20-minute bracket. This one here, it felt like it could have went a little longer, but of course this being a pay-per-view and that stuff, and it being in front of a very hot New York crowd that didn't particularly care much for the surprise of James Ellsworth, I think Impact made the right call in booking this, in having Drake win via, how many gravy trains? It was 2 gravy trains I have written down here, his finisher, twice. So, hey, Drake gets to win, picks up the mic, starts cutting a promo, says that he wants to take on some Hall of Fame talent next, and then out comes the brand new Hall of Famer, Abyss. And we get the Hall of Fame pop for the evening as Abyss throws Eli Drake through the table via a choke slam and gets the big crowd reaction at the end. Feel good segment. Congrats to Abyss. And you know what? Did not mind Eli Drake one bit here. I think he got over big time as a heel, and he was over big time as a heel with the crowd. Great stuff. Match of the night coming up next, in my opinion, for the Impact Knockouts Championship. Tessa Blanchard defeating Taya Valkyrie. These girls put in a solid effort. Did not have the clock running for any of these matches, so I just sat back and watched it on the pay-per-view. But this had to have been an easily 15 or 20 minute, or easy 15 or 20 minute affair, I should say. This thing was back and forth, great ebb and flow. Tessa Blanchard using the Magnum, which is essentially a flying top rope code breaker, as her finish to defeat Taya Valkyrie. Very coast-to-coast-esque type maneuver where she goes from one end of the ring, delivers a code breaker almost with the opponent at the other end of the ring. Fantastic maneuver. Like I said, I'm not sure. I have to go back and watch the All In match and see if she actually used it at All In at all. But if this is something that she's routinely started to use on Impact and is kind of brand new, or it's just, you know, developed this year, that's a strong finish. And you know, it's almost up there with Ember Moon's Eclipse top rope cutter for explosiveness from a female athlete as a finisher in kind of that division and that grouping. So and great match, by far match of the night for sure. Biggest disappointment of the night, in my opinion, was the Eddie Edwards Moose singles match, which got thrown out because Killer Kross jumped into the ring and interfered shortly after the bell rang to start the match, within the first 3 minutes or so, which brought out Tommy Dreamer to team with Eddie Edwards in an impromptu tag match. I would assume it was a no disqualification match because there was some weapon play in it. But Eddie Edwards and Tommy Dreamer defeated Moose and Killer Kross. Storyline being Moose and Killer Kross are kind of henchmen for the champion Austin Aries going forward here, and they've been kind of, you know, used in the past few weeks on these attacks on Impact, on Johnny Impact, and you know, Impact kind of going into this main event tonight at Bound for Glory, kind of one man standing alone against Free. But last week, Eddie Edwards came to the aid of Johnny Impact. So it seemed like, okay, maybe he's got some allies, right? Well, Edwards seemed like he was getting beat down, and then his former rival from earlier this year, Tommy Dreamer, came into the ring and started to team with Edwards again. So it seems like all is well on that side, and Edwards kind of continues this descent into being kind of like this new hardcore icon in Impact, and everybody continues along their merry way with that storyline. So it's kind of messed up at this point, but hopefully by January, when the next Impact pay-per-view is, we get a little bit of closure here, and I think we're due another Edwards Dreamer, maybe a hardcore match going this time again, which is ironically, I think, what they did at Slammiversary again, but we'll wait and see. That's just predictions going forward, but I think there's definitely going to be a blow-off between these two and Killer Kross and Moose going forward. OVE Rules match up next, which essentially was a Texas Tornado Trios match. I had to look at that because that's a bit of a tongue twister. But Sami Callihan and Jake and Dave Christ defeating Phoenix, Pentagon Jr., and Brian Cage. The last we've seen Pentagon Jr. on pay-per-view, of course, was a little over a month ago when he and Kenny Omega put on a really decent matchup at All In. And Pentagon Jr. having a huge year this year. 2018's been a huge breakout year for this guy. And Phoenix as well, same deal. Huge breakout year for Phoenix. Meanwhile, OVE, this faction, is starting to kind of gain its foothold a little bit. You got Callihan as the mouthpiece, and you got these two thugs with the former Irish Airborne, the Chris brothers, Jake and Dave, and they are really starting to be that next level of heel, upper mid-card heels that Impact can use in potential main event situations. So it's nice to see them develop, and this match tonight was pretty good. It was you know, your standard fare kind of tornado tag, people going all over the place type matchup. And here's the thing, since the quote-unquote incident with the bat earlier this year between Callihan and Eddie Edwards, I don't think Callihan has had a bad match. I think that Callihan has put in a great match whenever he's been on pay-per-view, and that's been about the only times I've seen him. I guess up next for him will be Marty Scurll on the Jericho Cruise, and that will be a great test for Sami Callihan. And that match itself might have show-stealing potential, or ship-stealing potential. It is a cruise, I guess. We'll find out. They just announced that a lot of that stuff will be streaming online via Fight here on November 3rd from that card. So we'll wait and see what is put together. And hopefully there might be a deal with Honor Club or something like that where, the show is uploaded onto their service, which if that's the case, I have Honor Club. I can take a look at it and let you all know what I think of it. So no promises, but we'll wait and see. But I thought that this match was pretty good, fairly entertaining, and I thought it was I don't want to say it was the better of the six-man wars of the night, because there was a very unique one coming up on this card. But as far as kind of standard sports entertainment-ish six-man tags go, it was really good. And now Callihan might challenge for the X Division belt because he's defeated Brian Cage 1-2-3, got the pinfall in the ring. So the Concrete Jungle Death Match was up next, where you had LAX, Conan, Santana, and Ortiz taking on King, Hernandez, and Homicide. Now, of course, Santana and Ortiz started the match 2 versus 3 because Conan was laid out in the back, but Conan would make his presence known towards the end of the match, coming out with a slapjack and laying out everybody in the ring. Probably, I want to say the match itself didn't really last too long. I think it was under about 10 or 11 minutes or so. But I want to say probably about the 7 or 8 minute mark he comes out with the slapjack and starts laying people out. It was very unique. I don't think I've ever seen anything to the extent where they take the apron off the ring and guys are using the loose boards underneath it to launch themselves for high spots and everything. I think it was quite insane and ludicrous that they would do it, but especially with boards sliding out from underneath them and everything. I think commentary did a great job of getting over how dangerous and how unique this situation was. I'm not sure if I'd like to see this again. I think that something like this could easily be replicated in like a weapons cage or something along those lines. Something that might be, I don't want to say a little bit safer for all those involved, but, a little bit more commonplace for fans to say, okay, well, this is good. But this was definitely a head turner. This is something that they had on the card that I don't think, if it has been done before, it hasn't been done in a long time. And I'm not sure if we'll see this in the future anywhere. But I'm not even sure if even Paul Heyman and ECW would even come up with something this twisted and whatever, because I think within the first minute and a half of the match or something like that, I think Hernandez got busted open. I don't think it was planned either, so it might have been a hard way. But dude, just it's a very unique match. I was very entertained watching it, but I think I've had my fill of that type of match. With that stipulation, for the foreseeable future by watching that. So, I won't be watching any Japanese death matches anytime soon. It'll take a while for me to digest that. But, LAX with Conan, Santana, and Ortiz got the win. And this was their big feud of the year for 2018. And you know what? If that's the way that feud ends, then I'm 100% for having that match in as it was laid out. So because it created a very beautiful story throughout the entire year, from the beginning of the feud right on to Bound for Glory with this. So, you know, it's been one of the interesting and fun things to watch with Impact is this deal. Even though they did, you know, kind of murder a kid in one of the lead up video packages leading to this, Impact's gonna impact. What can you do? Wacky video packages are their deal. And we got another wacky video package because it's Bound for Glory. We're going to get a wacky video package since the Great War of Decay and the Hardys. Geez, that's way back in 2016 now. It's hard to believe that that was over 2 years ago now at this point. But Allie goes into the undead realm to rescue Kira Hogan from Su Yung. Allie confronts her soul and can't do anything about it because Jim Mitchell is there and says, don't, you can confront your soul, but don't touch it. But we very clearly seeing her holding her soul's hands at one point, and then Su Yung confronts them up in the chapel. There's an axe involved, lots of blood, and eventually, as they're trying to escape in a coffin, that they get transported to this realm and that stuff. Su Yung and a bunch of undead brides surround them, and we see Rosemary saying, "Why are you here? Don't be here." Blah, blah, blah. Things happen. Rosemary stays in the undead realm, and Kira and Allie escape pretty much intact. But at the very end, Allie starts speaking like one of the undead voices that Su Yung was carrying and says, "We gotta go back." It's very twisted stuff. No doubt it will show up on YouTube. I think they said that this entire event will be on YouTube later this week, so if you haven't seen it, go via that source, I guess, and check it out. I know for sure that something like this, they did it with the Hardys stuff, and they did it, I think last year with the Matthews and Big Papa Pump thing and whatever that mess was. It's bizarre. It's what Impact's known for now at this point. It's kind of a trademark, traditional Impact thing on Bound for Glory to have the wacky video package with something. This time they did it with the women. It wasn't too bad for a B-grade horror movie. You know, it's your typical bad horror film. Another video package is ran, and this one announces Impact Homecoming, January 6, 2019, from the Asylum, the legendary Impact Asylum in Nashville, Tennessee at the Nashville Fairgrounds. My question is, January 6th is kind of a little bit hot on the heels of the big January 4th show that New Japan does, the Wrestle Kingdom show. So the eyes of the wrestling world will be focused more on what happens at New Japan and then the next day at New Year's Dash. I think fans might be a little bit, the hardcore fans and maybe some of that fan base that watches Impact might be a little wrestled out by the time that January 6th comes to fruition. But if you build a strong enough card, people will watch. So I think the fact that nostalgia will play a part in this pay-per-view, and the fact that they're doing some pretty unique stuff as we've seen shaping out of this pay-per-view, or shaping up in this pay-per-view with some guys, I think they'll get probably a decent look at least. But January 6th is a that's a tough day, especially 2 days after January 4th, and you know, your potential 5-star Tanahashi Omega, you know, battle for the IWGP title, right? You know, it's like drinking fine champagne and then going to the convenience store right after and having Canada Dry. It's not the same deal. But the Impact World title was the main event of the night. Austin Aries was the champion, taking on Johnny Impact. Johnny Impact ends up winning the match. One of the things that happened after the match, and is one of the most hotly discussed topics on Twitter after the card, was shortly after taking the pin, Aries bounces up as if nothing happened. So completely no selling the finish that Impact gave him. So Aries pops up and leaves while flipping off the crowd. and Don Callis. You know, you can tell that it was kind of a spontaneous spot. I don't think it was rehearsed or talked about at all. Impact was seen audibly saying, "Are you kidding me?" in the middle of the ring, as if to say, "Well, dude, you're stealing the thunder from my moment here." There was supposed to be probably a bigger ovation of, you know, it was Johnny's moment with the belt, with his wife at ringside, with Taya at ringside. Taya had taken a dive, you know, just moments before from Aries. So there was going to be, you know, the two beaten up warriors from this match, you know, standing tall over top of the fallen heel, right? I don't think Austin was going for any of that. Now, Austin, from all reports from what I've seen on Twitter and a few things, is a malcontent, you know, in the nicest possible way, but still a malcontent. We all know how he left WWE after the WrestleMania 33 debacle with the cruiserweight stuff. We all have seen him jump promotions from Ring of Honor to Impact to Dragon Gate to wherever, you know, throughout his career, and a lot of the reason is because the guy has a short temper. I've seen comparisons to CM Punk, and it might have been something with the Ring of Honor crew back then, with a small percentage of them at least, because a lot of them have, you know, it seems from the outside, that real, I guess, issue with authority. There's a way to do it, and then they like to be booked the way they have to be, or they want to be booked. I guess not have to be booked, but want to be booked. I've obviously am not providing any justification for what he did. You're a main event on a big pay-per-view, in fact, your company's biggest pay-per-view of the year. If you got issues with the office, you settle it either before or after the pay-per-view. You don't use the pay-per-view time to settle your issues with the office. Ergo, overlooking that, I thought that the main event was fairly stellar. Impact still, to this day, has moves like no other in wrestling. He teased retirement in a lot of these videos leading into this match and that stuff. So if this is indeed the last run for Johnny Impact, I think we're getting the best from him right now. But going forward, the big question mark is, will Austin Aries continue to be a part of Impact Wrestling, or is he done? Is he moving on? And if he is moving on, where is he moving on to? Pretty much the one place he hasn't been over the last, you know, 3 or 4 years or so is New Japan. And I'm not sure if anybody over there would take Austin Aries in New Japan, but it's too early to speculate on that. There might be, you know, he might already have signed a deal as of right now. We don't know that, right? And we won't know that until anything gets made public or whatever. You know, this is just supposing and just, you know, pulling stuff out of air if we're supposing that, right? But, you know, it was kind of a downer, because this show was 10 times better than the Bound for Glory from last year. They could finally, you know, towards the end of the card, I was thinking, this is awesome. You know, when the main event was in the ring, I was like, great, they can take that experience from last year with El Patron and whatever happened in the main event there and just kind of sweep it under the rug and move forward with this. This was great. And then this happened at the very end and kind of cast a pall on the entire night. So my rating out of 10, I usually just, with this, taking in all factors of watchability, rewatchability of the show, production value, quality of matches, entertainment factors, whether, you know, something was great enough to carry my attention throughout the entire night, or if I was dozing off halfway through or whatever. I'll give this show a 7.5 out of 10. I thought it was fairly solid, very comparable to many NXT takeovers that WWE has put together over the past few years. And it kind of reminded me of the first few Full Sail takeovers, like you know, the first 2 or 3 that they had on the network, where, you know, it's a younger talent pool, so you're trying to get used to them, and they got some established guys you know, and they're trying to make it all work, and you know, they're honoring the legends and that stuff. And there's a lot there, a lot to digest, but it was a fun card, and I think another great presentation from Impact. Slammiversary and Bound for Glory this year, I think, really knocked it out of the park. I think Slammiversary was their better offering, but Bound for Glory, hey, this was 7.5 out of 10. Top-notch entertainment for my dollar, I think. I'm not complaining about it at all. So what are your thoughts? Post them below. Thanks again for sticking with me through this. I'm Callihan Nitro. Later days. Happy wrestling watching.